Family, according to my mother, is a circle in which everyone is a part. However, I discovered my exact position within that circle on Thanksgiving 7 years ago. My supper was waiting for me on a thin paper plate by the doormat, while the dining table inside was flawlessly arranged for 8 people, complete with shining silverware, crystal glasses, and the comforting scent of roasted turkey, outside on the chilly concrete of her front porch. My mother sent me a sticky note. "You're not clean enough to eat here, sit with us or leave." I didn't cry a single tear. I simply picked up the plate, went to my car and left their life entirely. They believed they had effectively dumped me for 7 years. They believed me to be broken. However, my sister found me at my new address yesterday. Her hand trembled so much at what she saw that she dropped her phone. The calls then began. In just 1 hour, 89 calls were missed. I'm 34 years old and my name is Clara. You would see a woman who is solidly on her own 2 feet if you looked at my life today. But getting here was a difficult and drawn-out process. My environment was entirely different 7 years ago. The brisk fall air was biting on Thanksgiving evening, but it was nothing compared to what awaited me at my childhood home. I was always the family's black sheep when I was growing up. Chloe, my sister, was the golden child destined for corporate boardrooms and prestigious institutions. However, I eventually became an apprentice welder and mechanic because I liked the unvarnished, honest labor of my hands. My grease-stained overalls were seen as a disgrace by my family. I was a few minutes late on Thanksgiving, since I had just finished a demanding shift at the store. I could see the dining room window as I ascended the driveway. With pricey linen, shining crystal glasses, and a wonderful roasted turkey in the center, the table inside was beautifully arranged for 8 people. Already inside, my mother and siblings were sharing toasts and laughing. However, I froze when I got to the front door. I couldn't find a place inside. Rather, a thin paper plate filled with chilled leftovers was lying directly on the concrete porch near the doormat. A bright neon sticky note with my mother's signature handwriting was hidden behind a fork. "You're not hygienic enough to sit with us. Go or eat here." My fingers were stained by the cold grease from that paper plate, but my spirit was ruined by the knowledge of what my family had done. I didn't create a fuss or knock on the door. I just drove away from their lives, dropped the plate in the trash and walked back to my beat-up automobile. I silently vowed that night that they would never again be able to denigrate me. I took drastic measures to remove myself from their environment the following morning. I packed everything I owned into the back of my car, erased my old social media accounts and changed my phone number. I relocated to a city 3 states away, where no one knew my name or the oppressive demands of my family. The initial years were extremely taxing. Every day for 80 weeks, I toiled in a dark, drafty industrial garage, my hands covered in new burns and wounds and my muscles throbbing. I slept on a mattress on the floor of a small studio apartment and subsisted on instant noodles. I didn't desire or receive any family support at all. Driven solely by the silent will to disprove them, I was recreating my life from the ground up. Follow my story through to the finish and leave a comment about the city you're viewing from before I reveal what my sister discovered when she eventually located me. I may thus see the extent of my voyage, because I was secretly creating something enormous while my family thought I was broken and penniless. Silence for 7 years can transform a person, smoothing the rough edges of past suffering while strengthening resolve. Surrounded by the comforting buzz of industrial machinery and the overpowering smell of motor oil, I had at last found calm. I was working on a custom chassis for a high-end client on a cool Tuesday afternoon when a shadow suddenly passed across my open driveway's wide entrance. I removed my bulky welding mask, wiped the perspiration from my brow, and squinted in the intense sunlight. My sister Chloe stood there against the industrial steel backdrop, looking very uncomfortable. She had also changed during the past 7 years. The golden child's smooth, polished assurance was entirely absent. Her pricey clothing appeared rumpled. Her hands trembled slightly as she held a heavy, worn-out manila folder close to her chest, and her face was drawn with tiredness. Her eyes widened in complete disbelief as she observed my grease-stained overalls and the bulky tools strewn all around me. It's obvious that she hadn't anticipated finding me employed in such a setting. Chloe made a desperate stride forward before I could say anything. She stated that because our family was going through a terrible crisis, she had spent weeks trying to find me. A mound of unreported debt was causing the family firm to fail. They were frantic to locate a large private investor, to buy them out because their mother was in danger of going bankrupt. Chloe stood there, scanning the vast cutting-edge building with her eyes. She was totally oblivious to the reality of the situation, staring right through me. She told me that Apex Custom Design's primary investor resides and works on this estate. Her voice urgent. "Clara, I have to see him right now. This meeting is crucial to our family's future, and I don't have time to spare." I glanced at my hands' grease before turning back to face my sister. I was struck by how ironic the situation was. I gently said, "Follow me." Tossing my heavy wrench onto a nearby tool cart, I led her out of the busy garage bay and across the spotless courtyard toward the architectural glass front office building that anchored the commercial estate. Chloe trailed closely behind, holding her folder like a shield, still thinking I was just a low-level mechanic or maybe a tenant renting a back corner of the property. I opened the heavy glass doors, passed the front reception desk, and entered the large executive office. I moved around the enormous mahogany desk without trepidation and settled into the high-backed executive leather chair. Chloe froze in the middle of the room, staring at me with her mouth hanging open. I leaned forward and put my elbows on the spotless desk. "Sit down, Chloe," I urged. "You mentioned that you came here in search of the primary investor and owner who has the authority to settle the family's debts." You're staring at her. "This whole estate is mine." The heavy manila folder fell out of Chloe's hands and scattered documents all over the floor as she stood still in the middle of the office. She finally made the connection between the name of the multi-million-dollar corporate investor and the sister she had once expelled by staring at me and then down at the official business registration documents she had carried. She grabbed her phone out of her pocket in complete shock and panic. She lifted it silently, snapped a clear photo of me behind the executive desk, and posted it straight to our old family group chat. Her shaking fingers scrawled a single message beneath the picture. "This is something you must see immediately." I kept an eye on my desk phone. For 2 full minutes, the group conversation, which had been active all morning with terrified family updates, was utterly silent. Not a single word was typed. 3 states distant, the shock waves were still rippling. Then there was an explosion. Chloe's phone started to tremble violently against her palm, but my old number was still banned. It was more than just a ring. Incoming notifications made it scream. In only 1 hour, hundreds of desperate messages and 89 missed calls came in from our mother, our brother, and every other family member who had ignored us 7 years prior. With a completely white face, Chloe answered the phone and clumsily pressed the speakerphone button. In an instant, the executive office was filled with our mother's voice, which had entirely lost its previous disgust and was now dripping with a frantic, artificial flattery. "Is that you, Clara, sweetheart?" Through the speakerphone, my mother's voice begged, shaking with a sudden, deliberate tenderness. "The picture was just sent by Chloe. We are all ecstatic to see how well you've taken care of yourself. Actually, we were just discussing you. I've already set the main dining table for the upcoming holidays. At the center, there's a lovely spot set aside just for you where you truly belong. In order for us to rejoice as a family, please return home early this year." I felt nothing at all while I listened to her voice. The instant that paper plate hit the porch floor, the emotional control she previously had over me was gone. "The table is set for me, Mother," I said in a firm, icy voice. "It's amusing because you stated clearly 7 years ago that I wasn't clean enough to be seated at your table. You instructed me to either go or eat on the concrete porch near the doormat." I decided to go. The line was filled with a thick, oppressive quiet before she stammered and made pathetic excuses about how stressed up she was that evening. I immediately interrupted her. "I am not coming home, and I am not giving you a single dime to save your failing company," I stated forcefully. "However, I'll give you one legitimate option. In order to pay off your personal debt, my company will purchase the family house straight from the bank. But the deed immediately passes to me. You have precisely 30 days to find another place to live and pack your stuff." After 3 months, the paperwork was signed, and the dust had finally settled. As promised, I paid off the family's debt by purchasing the house, and my mother was able to move into a small apartment. Chloe and our brother were unable to manage the remaining family assets, so I sold them. And I continued to grow my business with the money I made. I moved into a lovely, serene cottage with a view of the valley. It's a tranquil haven with pure air and simply wind rustling. I am living completely on my terms and answerable to no one but myself for the first time in my adult life. However, I didn't want my success to be solely focused on making money. I set up a devoted foundation in remembrance of the young woman who once stood on a chilly doorstep with a paper plate. We ensure that everyone who has ever been told they weren't clean enough for success has the opportunity to create their own empire by funding trade school scholarships and providing tools for young women pursuing blue-collar jobs. If you had discovered the paper plate on the porch all those years ago, how would you have responded? When your family came pleading, would you have intervened to save them? Or would you have left like I did? Share your opinions in the comments section below. In the meantime, I'm leaving 2 more of my favorite stories from the channel on the last screen, which will undoubtedly surprise you.